Welcome to One Man's Opinion. Today I am reviewing the new Broadway play Purpose, written by Branden Jacobs-Jenkins and directed by Phylicia Rashad, running through July 6th at the Helen Hayes Theater at 240 West 44th Street in New York City. Got family troubles? Take a respite from it by visiting my Patreon page, where you can, for as little as $1 a month, support my work here as well as my classic cinema podcast, Yesterday's Matinee. Patrons get early access to the latest episode, which is currently the 1981 Lawrence Kasdan neo-noir erotic thriller, Body Heat, starring William Hurt and Kathleen Turner. Thank you to all my current patrons, especially my Neo and Hamilton tier patrons, and welcome to the new ones. Links to my Patreon and Spotify pages will be in the description. After a highly successful run of the play Appropriate that ran last season, winning 3 Tony Awards for Best Lighting, Best Actress for Sarah Paulson, and Best Revival of a Play, Branden Jacobs-Jenkins returns with a new 3-hour play about family and the lengths they'll go to protect each other, or more importantly, themselves, individually. I'm still a bit chuffed at Appropriate not getting nominated for Best New Play due to what was essentially a semantics issue, as it wasn't an original professional production, even though it was the first production on Broadway, but whatever, I digress. A transfer from Steppenwolf Theater in Chicago, Purpose is a smart, if overlong, comedy about 6 people, all lost in their own way, looking for some direction in their life and how that lack of direction adversely affects the people around them. The story is told from the perspective of Nazareth Naz Jasper, played by John Michael Hill, a photographer who spends as much time as he can away from his family shooting nature photography. He's quite adept at it and only reluctantly returns home when his former congressman brother, Solomon Jr. Jasper, played by Glenn Davis, is released from prison after getting into legal trouble. He and his wife Morgan, played by Alana Arenas, who's also in legal trouble in conjunction to Junior's crimes. The two are serving their sentences sequentially, so there will always be a parent to raise their children. So, Junior is out of prison, and Morgan is about to go in to serve her part of the sentence. Naz and Junior's father, Solomon, Sonny Jasper, played by Harry Lennix, is a retired traveling minister and civil rights activist who lives with his wife, Claudine Jasper, played by Latanya Richardson Jackson. The two are ferociously protective of the way their family are perceived, always looking to spin anything anyone says, whether it be family or not, to meet their narrative ends. This becomes important when in comes Aziza Houston, played by Kara Young, a friend of Naz, who had just met with him the previous night to collect his sperm sample for her so she can get pregnant. There's nothing romantic going on between the two, but they wanted to keep the pregnancy attempt secret. Naz's parents, though, become curious and suspicious, as Naz has never shown interest in women before. Here comes this beautiful young lady visiting, and all this time they've been suppressing their suspicion that Naz is gay. Of course, Sonny and Claudine have their own skeletons in their closet in an attempt to control whatever they can within the family. Everything is played for laughs, and up to a point, Jacobs-Jenkins does successfully make Purpose an hysterical adult comedy, and for the first couple of hours, I was along for the ride. But as the play rode forward and the heavier themes of the play presented itself, it felt like Jacobs-Jenkins had over-depended on the humor for too long, and it ended up taking some of the bite out of the play. There's several traumatic events that happen at the play's climax, but I'm thinking of one in particular, that I wish he had pulled the trigger with what happens in that moment instead of making it one more joke. Granted, the whole story is from Naz's perspective, so there is some serious unreliable narrator storytelling going on. How much of what Naz says happened the way it actually happened is dubious, as everything is painted through the lens of fourth wall-breaking narration, coloring events as how it makes Naz feel more than how it affected anyone else, which I was fine with up to a point. I'm generally not a fan of narration, as I'm more of a show-don't-tell sort of person. Well, in this case it works, and it makes more sense as the story progresses and we find out more about who Naz is and why it is told from his perspective. The problem is, it becomes too much of a crutch as the play progresses, leaning more and more on Naz not being present for scenes that would have been more impactful if we were able to witness them directly. On the other hand, if we were privy to every scene, this nearly 3-hour play would be closer to 4 or 5, which is way too tedious for a play of this nature. 3 hours is already pushing it. This is all a critique to the story, not the cast. As all six, I would enjoy watching them sit at a dinner table under the direction of Phylicia Rashad, chat for 16 hours straight about their favorite entry in the phone book. Latanya Richardson Jackson had the audience eating out of her hand as she would say something profoundly inspiring in a wizened matriarchal way in one moment, making some of the audience cheer, and then immediately turn around and say something completely ignorant or prejudiced in the very next beat. You can almost hear the audience deflate with disappointment in the character. It's fantastic acting, and the moments where Jacobs-Jenkins really shines as a writer. The same is true about Harry Lennix. His finale of Act 1 monologue about truth is powerful and almost makes you want to forgive Sonny for being a terrible father. Carrie Young is well on her way to being the new Broadway superstar. I've seen all 4 of her Broadway credits and she is getting better every time. She makes Aziza the smartest person in the room, but never betrays that intelligence to the rest of the characters in the play. Even as audience members look incredulously at her as she makes her final choice in the play, it is the smartest choice her character can make if you think about it. It's Naz's story to tell, but it's Aziza who walks away with the most dignity. John Michael Hill, Glenn Davis, and Alana Arenas are all excellent as well. Michael Hill makes some excellently nuanced choices, especially after suspicions about Naz's health comes to light. Todd Rosenthal's scenic design is properly ostentatious, as one would expect from a self-adulating minister and wife, basically turning their home into a museum of their civil rights activities with a portrait of Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. appropriately spotlighted front and center in the little rotunda part of the home. It's almost a shrine, but also not too subtle nod to the troubles of their past that come back to bite Sonny and Claudine. Purpose is a lot. I think the story has a lot to offer. It's witty, biting, intelligent, daring, and funny, but it is also a bit overlong, overburdened with narration that works up to a point, then overstays its welcome. Though I enjoy the comic nature of the piece, I think it could have let the weight of the story sit on the audience more, especially as the climax plays out. The cast is amazing, and director Phylicia Rashad does some incredible work with them. Though not as good as appropriate, Purpose is a worthy follow-up and definitely helps establish Branden Jacobs-Jenkins as a premier playwright of the 21st century. But I'm only one man's opinion, so be sure to leave yours in the comments below. If you'd like to see Purpose, I'll leave a link in the description where you can get tickets. Also in the description will be links to my Patreon and Spotify pages, as well as my social media handles where you can support my work. You can also support me by liking and sharing this video, subscribing to the channel, and clicking the notification bell to be alerted to future reviews. My next review will be Classic Stage Company's production of Wine in the Wilderness off Broadway. Thank you for watching, and I will see you at the theater.